Paradoxes of sovereignty. I am nothing. This parody of an affirmation is the final word of sovereign subjectivity, liberated from the influence that it would like to, or that it must, have on things. Because I know that I am, at bottom, this subjective, content-free existence. Georges Bataille, Sovereignty. In the spectacle, power is everywhere. That is, all relations are in the final analysis relations of domination. And because of this, no one is sovereign in the spectacle. It is an objective world where everyone must first subjugate themselves in order to subjugate others in turn. To live in conformance with man's fundamental aspiration to sovereignty is impossible in the spectacle, except in one single instant, the instant of the act. He who isn't just playing around with life has a need for acts, for gestures, so that his life could become more real to him than a simple game which can be oriented in any given direction. In the world of the commodity, which is the world of generalized reversibility, where all things merge and transform into one another, where everything is merely ambiguous, transitional, ephemeral, and blended together, only acts cut through it all. In the splendor of their necessary brutality, they carve an unsolvable after into what had been before, which people will regretfully have to recognize as definitive. A gesture, an act, is an event. It cuts open a wound in the chaos of the world, and installs at the bottom of that wound its shards of unambiguity, univocity. It is a matter of establishing so profoundly in their difference things that have been judged as different that what separated them out from each other can never have any possibility of being erased. If there's anything in bloom that thwarts domination, it is the fact that even dispossessed of everything, even in all his nudity, man still has an uncontrollable metaphysical power of repudiation, the power to kill others and to kill himself. Death, every time it intervenes, rips a disgraceful hole in the biopolitical tissue. Total nihilism, nihilism fulfilled, which has really fulfilled nothing but the dissolution of all otherness in a limitless circulatory immanence, always meets its defeat right there. Upon contact with death, life suddenly ceases to be taken for granted. The duty to make decisions, which sanctions all properly human existence, has always been in part tied to the approach to that abyss. On the eve of the day in March 1998, when he massacred 4 Bloom students and a Bloom professor, little Mitchell Johnson declared to his incredulous schoolmates, "Tomorrow I will decide who will live and who will die." This is as far from the Herostratus-ism of Pierre Riviere as it is from fascist hysteria. Nothing is more striking in the reports on the carnage brought about by Kipland, Kinkel, or Alain Oreiller than their state of cold self-control or total vertical detachment relative to the world. "I am no longer acting out of sentiment," said Alain Oreiller while executing his mother. There's something calmly suicidal in the affirmation of so omnilateral a non-participation, indifference, and refusal to suffer. Often the spectacle uses this as a pretext to start talking about gratuitous acts, a generic qualifier with which it hides the purposes it doesn't want to understand, all the while making use of them as a fantastic opportunity to re-inject some life into one or the other of bourgeois utilitarianism's favorite false paradoxes, as long as those acts aren't lacking in hatred or reason. To prove this, all one needs to do is watch the 5 videotapes that the monsters of Littleton filmed in anticipation of their operation. Their program appears in them quite clearly. We're going to set off a revolution of the dispossessed. Here hatred itself is undifferentiated, free of all personality. Death enters into the universal in the same way as it emerges from the universal, and it has no anger about it. This isn't about giving some revolutionary significance to such acts, and it's hardly even about treating them as exemplary. It's about understanding what they express the doom of, and grasping onto them in order to plumb the depths of bloom. And whoever follows this path to the end will see that bloom is nothing, but that this nothing is a nothing that is sovereign, an emptiness with a pure potential. The contradiction between Bloom's isolation, apathy, powerlessness, and insensitivity on the one hand, and on the other his dry and brutal need for sovereignty, can only bring about more of these acts, absurd and murderous as they may be, yet still necessary and true. It's all about knowing how to deal with them in the right terms in the future, like in Mallarmé's Igitur, for instance. One of the acts of the universe has been committed there. Nothing else but the breath remained, the end of speech and gesture united. Blow out the candle of being, by which everything has existed. Proof.